A war that cannot be avoided. Ethan turned to Zyron. How long do we have? Zyron exhaled slowly. Days. Maybe weeks, if we're lucky. But not much longer. Ethan looked back up at the stars. His fate had been sealed the moment he chose to help Zyron. Earth was no longer invisible. And now, the most dangerous force in the galaxy had set its sights on humanity. But something burned in Ethan's chest. Something new. Hope. Because for the first time in history, humanity wasn't just waiting for an attack. For the first time in history, they had a chance to fight back. Ethan turned away from the sky and faced Zyron. We need to prepare, he said. If Earth's going to survive, we need allies. We need weapons. We need a plan. Zyron studied him for a long moment. Then he gave a slow nod. You're right, Zyron said. But first, we need to disappear. Ethan grinned. I think I know just the place. With that, they turned and vanished into the forest, heading toward the Arctic outpost, the first step in humanity's greatest fight. The war had not yet begun, but Ethan Carter had already made his choice, and when the Dominion returned, Earth would be ready. A deep crater had been carved into the Earth, still glowing with blue energy. In the center, Ethan knelt on the ground. His body had changed. Golden veins of alien energy pulsed beneath his skin. His eyes glowed with knowledge. Zyron stared in shock. You survived. Ethan stood, his hands clenched into fists. The enforcer was gone, but Ethan could still feel something. A presence, something bigger than just this battle. He turned to Zyron, his voice stronger than before. They know, Ethan said. The Dominion knows what I did. Zyron nodded. Then they will come in force. Ethan looked to the sky. For the first time in history, Earth wasn't just prey. It was a threat, and Ethan Carter was ready for war. A new beginning, the war to come. The night air was still, the forest eerily silent after the battle. The ground beneath Ethan Carter still hummed with the fading remnants of the energy blast. His body felt different, stronger, lighter, faster. He lifted his hand and saw the faint glow of golden veins pulsing beneath his skin. He wasn't just human anymore. The Dominion's knowledge had fused with him, changing him in ways he didn't yet understand. He had become something new. Zyron, still leaning against a tree for support, stared at Ethan as if seeing him for the first time. His golden eyes widened in a mixture of shock and awe. You survived the transfer, Zyron breathed, barely able to believe it. No one has ever. I didn't think it was possible. Ethan turned his gaze to the sky. Somewhere out there, the Dominion was watching. And they knew. They knew what had happened here. They're coming, Ethan said, his voice steady. Aren't they? Zyron nodded grimly. Yes, and not just for me anymore. His gaze darkened. Now, they're coming for you. Ethan exhaled slowly. It was only a matter of time. But something deep inside him had shifted. For the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid. Earth's new reality. Ethan and Zyron didn't have the luxury of rest. They needed a plan. Their first priority was to disappear, to go completely off-grid. The Dominion wouldn't send just another enforcer next time. They would send an entire fleet. And if Mild's secret human organization found Ethan first, he had no doubt they would try to contain him. Or worse. He turned to Zyron. We need a way to leave this place. Fast. Zyron nodded and reached for a small device hidden in his broken exosuit. He pressed a series of buttons, and suddenly, a holographic star map flickered to life between them. This, Zyron explained, is the Dominion's surveillance grid. It shows every satellite, drone, and patrol ship they have stationed near this sector. Ethan frowned. Wait, you mean they've already been monitoring Earth? Zyron's jaw tightened. They've been monitoring you for years. Ethan's blood ran cold. Then why haven't they attacked yet? Zyron looked at him. Because you weren't a threat. He hesitated, then added, "Until now." Ethan clenched his fists. He didn't like what that meant. Zarin zoomed in on a section of the map, an isolated location in the Arctic. "There," he pointed, "an old Dominion research outpost. It was abandoned decades ago. If we can reach it, we might be able to salvage technology, find weapons, maybe even a way to send a warning to humanity." Ethan nodded. It wasn't much, but it was a start. But before they could move, a low rumbling sound filled the air. Ethan's head snapped up. The trees swayed unnaturally, the air suddenly thick with pressure. Then, above them, the sky burned red. The Dominion's response. Ethan and Zarin barely had time to react before a colossal spaceship broke through the atmosphere, its dark, jagged hull blocking out the stars. It was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Massive, predatory. A Dominion warship. "This is bad," Zarin said, his voice low. "This is very, very bad." Ethan's mind raced. They weren't ready for this. Zarin quickly scanned the ship's energy signatures through his device. His eyes widened. "They're not here to destroy," he murmured. "They're here to observe." Ethan frowned. "Observe what?" Zarin turned to him, his expression grim. "You." Ethan's stomach dropped. The warship was scanning the battlefield, likely recording everything that had just happened. Then, as quickly as it had arrived, it vanished. Gone. No destruction. No invasion. Just a warning. "They've seen what you've become," Zarin said quietly. "And now, they're deciding what to do next." And now, it was done playing. "You will not survive." Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere left to go. Beside him, Zarin struggled to sit up. His silver exosuit was broken, blue blood staining the ground beneath him. He was breathing heavily, but his golden eyes still burned with determination. "This is it, Ethan," Zarin rasped. "No more running." Ethan clenched his jaw. "No more running. Fine. If this was where they made their stand, so be it." The Dominion's power. The Enforcer moved first. In a single instant, it vanished, only to reappear directly in front of them. Its speed was inhuman, faster than anything Ethan had ever seen. Its energy blade slashed toward his chest. Ethan barely had time to react. He threw himself backward, feeling the blade slice through the air inches from his skin. The heat from it scorched his jacket. The Enforcer pressed forward, its movements fluid and precise. Zarin, despite his injuries, lunged forward, aiming a strike at the Enforcer's core. But the alien warrior saw it coming. With a casual flick of its wrist, the Enforcer caught Zarin's arm mid-strike. Then, in one swift motion, it hurled Zarin across the clearing. Ethan watched in horror as Zarin's body smashed into a boulder, his exosuit cracking even further. "Zarin," Ethan yelled. The Enforcer turned back to him. It didn't see Zarin as a threat anymore. Ethan was the target now, the unimaginable gift. Ethan's breath came in sharp gasps. "I can't beat this thing." But then, he felt it. The crystal sphere Zarin had given him burned against his chest, still hidden in his jacket. A whisper echoed in his mind. Zarin's words. "The knowledge inside this is not just information. It is power." Ethan's eyes widened. The crystal wasn't just data. It was a weapon. He gripped the sphere tightly, feeling it pulse beneath his fingers. As soon as he made contact, a surge of information flooded his mind. Memories, not his own. Zarin's memories. Scenes flashed before his eyes. His people, their war against the Dominion, their final desperate plan. Ethan understood now. This was what the Dominion feared. This was why Zarin had been hunted across the galaxy. Not because he was dangerous, but because he carried the secret to destroying them. And now, that secret belonged to Ethan. Activating the gift. The Enforcer charge. Its energy blade cut through the air, heading straight for Ethan's head. But this time, He was ready. Just as the blade was about to strike, Ethan moved faster than he ever thought possible. His body reacted on instinct, dodging with precision, his muscles moving as if someone else was controlling them. No, not someone else. He was becoming something more. The knowledge wasn't just in his mind. It was in his nervous system, his muscles, his very being. He could see the Enforcer's attacks before they happened. It swung again. Ethan ducked. It slashed low. Ethan jumped. Then, he countered. With a speed he didn't know he had, Ethan pressed the crystal sphere against the Enforcer's chest. For the first time, the Enforcer hesitated. Then, it screamed. A pulse of blue energy erupted from the sphere, surging into the Enforcer's body. Its metal frame twisted and convulsed, its red eye flickering wildly. Its armor began to melt. The weapon was working. The Enforcer staggered back, its movements erratic. Its body was breaking apart. But it wasn't enough. The Dominion's power was too strong. The energy wasn't killing it. It was adapting again. Ethan's mind raced. I need more power. Then, he made a choice. If he couldn't destroy the Enforcer from the outside, he would destroy it from within. The ultimate sacrifice. Ethan pressed the sphere against his own chest. Zyron's eyes widened in horror. Ethan, no. But it was too late. The moment Ethan activated the sphere, his entire body ignited with energy. The Dominion's knowledge, its weaknesses, its true nature, it all flowed into him. He felt his body shifting, his mind expanding, his cells evolving. The Enforcer lunged at him. One final desperate attack. Ethan didn't move. Instead, he let the energy consume them both. A massive shockwave exploded through the clearing, engulfing Ethan and the Enforcer in pure raw light. The Dominion warrior let out a final mechanical screech. Then, it vanished. The aftermath. The forest was silent. Zyron, barely able to stand, staggered toward the blast site. Ethan's mind raced. Think, think, think. They couldn't outrun it. They couldn't fight it. So the only option left was to outsmart it. The trap. Ethan's eyes darted through the dark forest, scanning for anything useful. Then, his gaze locked onto an old broken bridge, barely visible through the trees. It was part of an abandoned logging operation, once used to transport heavy trees across the gorge below. The bridge was old, rotting, and hanging by only a few rusted metal cables. Ethan's heart pounded with an idea. Zyron, he gasped, struggling to keep the alien upright. That bridge, can you still move? Zyron's golden eyes flickered with pain, but he gave a weak nod. For a little longer. That's all we need. The Dominion Enforcer was getting closer, its mechanical voice echoing through the forest. Surrender. Your fate is sealed. Ethan forced down the terror rising in his throat. Not today, you bastard, he muttered under his breath. He yanked Zyron forward, sprinting toward the bridge. The wood creaked dangerously beneath their weight as they stepped onto it. The gorge below was deep and dark, jagged rocks waiting hungrily at the bottom. The drop was at least 100 feet, a death sentence if they fell. The Dominion Enforcer stopped at the edge of the bridge. Its red eye scanned them, analyzing every possible outcome. You cannot escape. Ethan's chest heaved with exhaustion, but he forced a mocking grin onto his face. Then come and get us. The Enforcer stepped onto the bridge. The wood groaned under its weight. Perfect. Ethan slowly reached into his pocket, fingers brushing against the small plasma cutter he had stolen from the observatory before escaping. One good cut, and the bridge would fall. The Enforcer took another step forward. The cables holding the bridge strained. Ethan pressed the plasma cutter against the thickest cable and ignited it. A searing blue flame sliced through the metal, and the bridge lurched violently. The Dominion Enforcer reacted instantly, its metal body shifting. But it was too late. The bridge snapped. With a deafening roar, The entire structure collapsed, sending wood, cables, and the enforcer plunging into the abyss below. For a split second, Ethan saw its glowing red eye vanish into the darkness. Then, silence. The cost of survival. Ethan and Zirin barely managed to scramble onto solid ground before the last of the bridge gave way. Ethan collapsed onto his hands and knees, his body trembling with exhaustion. His chest heaved for air, sweat dripping down his face. Zirin lay beside him, gasping, his silver armor cracked and broken, his blue blood staining the ground. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They had done it. They had killed a Dominion warrior. Ethan let out a shaky laugh, running a hand through his sweat-soaked hair. "That was insane," he muttered. "That was." A horrible screeching sound cut through the air. Ethan's blood turned to ice. No, it wasn't possible. He turned toward the gorge. A single red glow flickered in the darkness below. Then it started rising. No way. Ethan staggered backward as the Dominion enforcer hovered up from the abyss, its body twisting and reforming as if it had never fallen at all. Its metal shifted and molded, repairing itself midair. Its single red eye locked onto them once more. "You will not escape into time." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. The plan had failed. The enforcer couldn't be killed. Not like that. And now, it was angry. Zirin's weakened voice broke through the panic. "Ethan," he whispered, his fingers clenching weakly around Ethan's sleeve. Ethan turned. "What?" Zirin's golden eyes, still filled with pain, held one final spark of defiance. "We fight, or we die." Ethan swallowed hard. They had no weapons, no backup, no chance. But Zirin was right. It was time to fight. The last stand. The Dominion enforcer hovered above the abyss, its liquid metal body shifting and reforming, as if the fall had done nothing to it. Its single red eye pulsed, analyzing, calculating. Ethan stared in disbelief. His heart pounded in his chest. We dropped it into a 100-foot fall. It should be dead. But it wasn't. It was evolving. Its once smooth, reflective surface hardened, armor-like plating forming across its limbs. Its arms extended, splitting open to reveal glowing energy blades that hummed with lethal precision. The enforcer had adapted. Zirin clenched his jaw, leaning against the wall. "If your people turn me over, they will not be spared." "I know," Ethan muttered. "That's why I'm not letting that happen." He reached for the crystal sphere Zirin had given him earlier. He didn't know how it worked yet, but he knew it held the key to something bigger than himself. He tucked it into his jacket and grabbed a small emergency backpack from the corner, stuffing it with first aid supplies, a flashlight, and a handgun he had kept for security. Then, the front doors burst open. Boots thundered against the floor as a SWAT team stormed inside. Dressed in all-black tactical gear, their rifles aimed forward. A voice shouted, "Dr. Carter, step away from the alien. Now." Zirin hissed in pain, bracing himself against the wall. His golden eyes locked onto Ethan's, as if silently asking what he was going to do. Ethan's heart pounded. He had two choices. Turn Zirin in, play it safe, hope Mills and his people knew what they were doing. Run, keep Zirin hidden, take the knowledge and risk everything. Mills stepped forward, his own gun drawn. His expression was calm, but his eyes held a warning. "Don't do this, Ethan," he said. "You can't save him." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Then maybe I'll save us instead." And before Mills could react, Ethan grabbed Zirin and hit the emergency hatch. The underground escape. They fell into the underground storage room just as bullets ripped through the floor above. Ethan landed hard, his shoulder slamming into the concrete. Zirin collapsed beside him, coughing violently. Above, Mills' voice roared, "Secure the building. Find them." Ethan ignored the pain in his body and hauled Zirin to his feet. "Can you run?" Zirin nodded weakly. I will try. They had only one way out, a small maintenance tunnel that led out into the forest. Ethan had used it a few times when heavy snowfall had blocked the main doors. Now, it was their only hope. He yanked open the metal grate and crawled inside, Zarin close behind. Behind them, footsteps pounded against the floor above. Then, a terrifying new sound, a deep mechanical hum. Ethan's blood ran cold. Zarin froze, his golden eyes wide. No, it's not possible. They wouldn't risk. BZZZZT. A searing red energy beam cut through the ceiling like butter. The Dominion was inside the building. Ethan grabbed Zarin and ran. A new enemy appears. The tunnel was tight and suffocating. The walls felt like they were closing in. The only sound was their ragged breathing and the occasional echo of footsteps behind them. Then, a loud crash. Ethan risked a glance over his shoulder. The tunnel entrance was gone, replaced by a glowing red figure. It was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. A Dominion enforcer, a tall, armored warrior, humanoid in shape but with a metallic, almost liquid-like body, its limbs shifting and reshaping as it moved. Its head was smooth and featureless, except for a single blazing red eye in the center. It lifted an energy spear, pointing it toward them. Surrender. Zarin grabbed Ethan's wrist. Run. Ethan didn't hesitate. They ran. The cliffhanger ending. Bursting out of the tunnel, they stumbled into the forest, moonlight glinting off the leaves. Zarin staggered, his body failing him. Ethan grabbed him before he could collapse completely. Behind them, the tunnel erupted in fire. The enforcer was coming. Ethan tightened his grip on Zarin and kept moving. They didn't have a plan. They didn't know where to go. But they knew one thing. If they stopped running, Earth's last chance of survival would die with them. The Great Escape. The forest was alive with danger. The moon hung low, casting pale silver light through the canopy of leaves. Every shadow twisted and stretched, distorting into eerie shapes. The only sound was the rustling of leaves and the heavy, labored breathing of Dr. Ethan Carter as he half-carried, half-dragged the wounded alien Zarin through the thick underbrush. Behind them, the tunnel they had escaped from erupted into flames, sending a fiery glow flickering against the trees. The heat licked at Ethan's back as he forced his exhausted legs to move faster. And then came the sound that made his blood run cold. A deep mechanical humming, slow and rhythmic, like a predator playing with its prey. It was hunting them. The Dominion enforcer. Ethan dared to glance over his shoulder and felt his stomach tighten with fear. The creature wasn't running. It didn't need to. It glided effortlessly over the forest floor, its liquid-like metal body shifting and twisting with an unnatural grace. Its single glowing red eye burned in the darkness, locking onto them like a wolf cornering wounded prey. It was toying with them. It knew they had nowhere to go. He had just witnessed the fall of an entire civilization, not through history books, but through the memories of someone who lived it. He shook his head. But why destroy your people? What do they want? Zarin exhaled. The Dominion does not conquer. They do not rule. They only erase. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. But why? Zarin's golden eyes flickered. Because they fear what we know. Ethan frowned. Fear. Zarin nodded. The Dominion is ancient, far older than Earth, older than my people. They see knowledge as the only real power in the universe. They do not take slaves. They do not steal technology. Instead, they destroy any species that could one day rival them. Ethan's heart pounded. And they think Earth is a threat. Zarin gave a slow nod. Not yet. But you are close. Closer than you realize. Ethan shook his head, his mind racing. So if I use this knowledge, if I try to advance humanity, won't that just make them come faster? Zarin's voice was almost a whisper. Yes, but if you don't, they will come anyway. Ethan closed his eyes, his hands clenching into fists. He had been given something extraordinary, something that could change everything. But it came with a price. A dangerous decision. Ethan paced the small storage room, his mind burning with possibilities. With what he had just seen and learned, he could revolutionize Earth. Cures for diseases, unlimited energy sources, space travel. Everything was in his mind now. But Xiren's warning haunted him. If he used it, the Dominion would come. But if he didn't, they would still come. Only this time, Earth would be unprepared. He turned back to Xiren. What do I do? Xiren's golden eyes studied him carefully. The choice, he said, is yours. Suddenly, the alarm system in the observatory crackled to life. ANTRUDRDTKTE. Ethan's stomach dropped. Outside, the sky was glowing red. The Dominion was already here. The betrayal and the revelation. The observatory's red warning lights flashed wildly, casting eerie shadows across the walls. The alarm blared, echoing through the empty halls. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he stared at the security monitor. Outside, 3 dark figures stood at the edge of the tree line, their glowing red eyes piercing through the darkness. The Dominion had found them. Xiren, still weak and injured, tried to push himself up. His golden eyes flickered with urgency. They should not have found me this quickly, he rasped. Someone must have led them here. Ethan's stomach twisted. Led them here, he echoed. A sinking feeling gripped his chest. And then, his phone rang. The screen lit up with a name that sent a shockwave of dread through his body. Agent Mills. The call that changes everything. Ethan hesitated for only a second before answering. His voice was sharp. Mills, tell me you're not involved in this. The response came calm and measured, too calm for the situation. Ethan, listen to me. Step away from the alien. Walk outside with your hands up. You don't know what you're dealing with. Ethan's grip tightened around the phone. You knew about them, he accused. You knew about the Dominion. About Xiren. Mills let out a slow sigh. Yes. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. His best friend, someone he trusted, had betrayed him. Who do you work for? Ethan demanded. A pause. Then Mills said, not everyone who studies the stars wants to befriend what's out there, Ethan. Some of us know better. The word sent a chill down Ethan's spine. What do you mean? I mean, Mills continued, his voice growing harder. Earth is not ready for what you're playing with. That alien, he's a liability. You think the Dominion is the only threat. You think we don't already know about them. Ethan's fingers dug into the phone. If you know about them, why aren't you warning people? Why aren't you preparing? Mills' voice darkened. Because the best way to stay safe is to stay hidden. No signals. No threats. No alien alliances. We've spent decades keeping Earth off their radar. And now, thanks to you, they're here. Ethan felt his world tilt. Mills wasn't working for the Dominion. He was working for a secret human organization dedicated to keeping Earth isolated. Xiren's words echoed in his mind. If they find me, Earth will be next. And now, they had found him. The race against time. Ethan cut the call and turned to Xiren, who was now struggling to stand. We need to go, Ethan said, his voice urgent. They'll be inside any minute. A dangerous lie. Ethan's grip on the wrench tightened. His mind screamed at him to run, to fight, to do something. Instead, he forced himself to act calm. If they suspected he was hiding Xiren, they would kill him instantly. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, his voice steady. The figure tilted its head, as if studying him. Then it moved, too fast for Ethan's eyes to track. In the blink of an eye, the creature was right in front of him. Cold, clawed fingers brushed against his forehead. A searing pain shot through Ethan's skull, like something was trying to crawl inside his mind. Lies. Ethan jerked back, gasping. His vision blurred for a moment, his head pounding from whatever the creature had done. The being let out a sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a growl. It stepped back, its red eyes narrowing. "We will find him." With a final glance around the observatory, the shadowy figure turned and glided out the door. Then, in the blink of an eye, they were gone. A shocking revelation. Ethan slumped against the wall, heart hammering against his ribs. His body trembled as he tried to process what just happened. Then, from below the floor hatch, he heard a weak voice. "Ethan, you don't understand. They aren't just hunters." Zyron's voice was barely a whisper. Ethan kneeled, opening the hatch slightly. "Then what are they?" Zyron's golden eyes stared up at him, filled with something that made Ethan's blood run cold. "They are the Dominion, and if they find me, Earth will be next." The gift of knowledge. The observatory felt eerily silent. The shadowy hunters, the Dominion, had left, but their presence still lingered like a sickness in the air. Ethan sat on the cold floor, his hands trembling as he processed what had just happened. He had faced something not of this world. Not just Zyron, but the creatures hunting him. Beings that could phase in and out of reality, creatures that could touch his mind and feel his thoughts. Ethan clenched his jaw. If Zyron was telling the truth, then humanity was in more danger than anyone could imagine. Taking a deep breath, he lifted the floor hatch and climbed down into the underground storage room. The alien's secret. The space beneath the observatory was cramped and dusty, filled with old research equipment, shelves of data drives, and broken telescope parts. In the dim glow of the emergency light, Zyron sat against the wall, his breathing shallow. His silver exosuit, now cracked and stained with dark blue blood, was barely holding together. The wound in his side still leaked the alien liquid, though it had slowed. Ethan crouched beside him. "Are you okay?" Zyron lifted his gaze. His golden eyes, though filled with exhaustion, held a strange kind of determination. "They will return," he whispered. "They will never stop hunting me." Ethan swallowed. He knew Zyron was right. "Then tell me," Ethan said. "Who are they? Why are they after you?" Zyron hesitated, then pulled something from a hidden compartment in his exosuit, a small crystal sphere, no bigger than a marble. The moment he held it up, it glowed, a soft blue light that pulsed, almost as if it were alive. Ethan's eyes widened. "What is that?" Zyron held the sphere between his fingers, staring at it as if it carried the weight of entire worlds. "This," he said, "is the last piece of my people's knowledge." He looked at Ethan. "And now it must be yours." The knowledge transfer. Ethan flinched as Zyron suddenly pressed the crystal sphere against his forehead. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, a flood of images, sounds, and feelings exploded into Ethan's mind. He gasped, his body locking up, his muscles tightening as if every nerve was being rewritten. He saw planets he had never known existed, civilizations rising and falling, towering cities built on alien worlds. He heard languages he didn't understand, yet somehow he did. He saw Zyron's homeworld, a magnificent planet of floating temples, glowing rivers, and technology beyond anything Earth had ever seen. Then he saw its destruction, a massive fleet, dark and endless, blotting out the sky. The Dominion. They came without warning. They came with only one purpose, to erase Zyron's people from existence. Ethan jerked back, the images vanishing, his head spinning. His breathing was ragged, his hands gripping the ground. Zyron pulled his hand away, the crystal's light fading. Ethan could still feel the knowledge lingering in his mind, like an echo. He looked at Zyron, his eyes wild. "Why? Why did you give this to me?" Zyron's voice was weak but firm. "Because humanity has a choice. If the Dominion finds you first, Earth will burn like my world did. But if you understand this knowledge, you may have a chance to fight back." The truth about the Dominion. Ethan sat in stunned silence, a gift beyond imagination. His hands clenched into fists, This was insane. But if there was even a chance this alien was telling the truth, if there was even a possibility that this gift could change everything, then he couldn't walk away. With a deep breath, Ethan made his choice. "Come on," he whispered, kneeling beside the alien. He lifted the weakened figure onto his shoulders. It was lighter than he expected, but still, carrying it was a struggle. The humming sound grew louder. Red lights flashed between the trees. They were almost here. Ethan gritted his teeth and ran toward the observatory, his heart hammering against his ribs. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. His life, and maybe all of humanity, would never be the same again. The chase begins. The observatory's doors slammed shut as Ethan staggered inside. His breath ragged from the weight of the alien draped over his shoulders. Xiren, as the being had barely managed to whisper before losing consciousness, was still barely breathing. The blue liquid, his blood, was staining Ethan's jacket. But Ethan didn't have time to worry about that. The low humming sound outside had grown louder, more intense, vibrating through the walls of the observatory. He rushed to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to peek outside. What he saw made his stomach twist with fear. Through the thick trees, 3 dark, humanoid figures were moving toward the observatory. They weren't walking. They were gliding, their feet hovering slightly above the ground. Their bodies shimmered, as if they weren't entirely solid, flickering in and out of the darkness like mirages. And their eyes, glowing red slits, scanning the area like predators hunting for prey. Ethan's grip on the curtain tightened. He had no idea who or what these things were, but he knew one thing. They weren't human. They were here for Xiren. And if they found him, Ethan was sure they wouldn't leave a witness alive. A desperate plan. Ethan turned back to Xiren, who lay on the floor, weak but conscious. His golden eyes fluttered open, locking onto Ethan. "They're here," Ethan whispered. Xiren's breathing hitched. He tried to sit up, wincing in pain. "You must hide me." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. He didn't have much time. The observatory had no basement, no real hiding places. But then he thought of the underground storage room, accessible through a hatch in the floor near the back wall. He grabbed Xiren under the arms and dragged him across the floor, gritting his teeth at the effort. "Come on, work with me," he muttered. Xiren groaned but tried to help, pushing himself slightly with whatever strength he had left. Ethan reached the hidden floor hatch and pulled it open. A short ladder led down into the darkness. "Get in," Ethan urged. Xiren hesitated, staring at him. His golden eyes studied Ethan as if searching for something. Then, with a weak nod, he climbed down. Ethan pulled the hatch shut just as the humming outside stopped. A knock echoed through the observatory. Not a normal knock. It was slow, deliberate, and unnerving. Knock, knock, knock. Ethan froze. His heartbeat was so loud he was sure they could hear it. The knock came again. Then a voice, smooth and hollow, seeped through the walls. "We know you're in there." Face to face with the hunters, Ethan swallowed hard. His fingers hovered over his phone. He should call the police. The military. Someone. But deep down, he knew no one could help him now. He stepped toward the door, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Who are you?" Silence. Then a whisper. "Open the door, human." Something inside him screamed, "Don't do it." But before he could react, a strange, low-frequency vibration rippled through the walls. Every object in the room shook violently. The lights flickered. They were trying to break in. Ethan panicked. He grabbed the nearest object, a heavy metal wrench, as if that would do anything against whatever was out there. Then the front door creaked open. A shadowy figure stepped inside. Its body was unnatural, shifting between solid and mist-like form, flickering like a glitch in reality. Its glowing red eyes locked onto Ethan. It smiled, a disturbing, hollow expression. Where is he? The mysterious visitor. The observatory stood alone on the edge of a dark forest, far from the noise of the city. It was a quiet night, except for the occasional rustling of leaves as the wind whispered through the trees. Inside the observatory, Dr. Ethan Carter sat at his desk, staring at the computer screen. The telescope above him scanned the vast sky, searching for anything unusual. Ethan had always dreamed of discovering something extraordinary, something that would change the way humans saw the universe. But tonight, he was simply tired. He stretched his arms and rubbed his eyes, ready to make another cup of coffee. Just as he stood up, a loud alarm blared through the observatory. His computer screen flashed red. Unidentified object detected. Impact in 30 seconds. Ethan's heart pounded. He rushed to the telescope's live feed and saw a burning object streaking across the sky. It was moving fast, heading straight for the forest near the observatory. Boom! The ground trembled as the object crashed in the distance. The sound echoed through the night, followed by an eerie silence. The wind stopped. The forest held its breath. Ethan grabbed a flashlight and his jacket. He knew he shouldn't go alone. This could be dangerous. But curiosity pulled him forward. His heartbeat quickened as he stepped into the night. A shocking discovery. The trees stood tall, their dark silhouettes stretching against the cloudy sky. The air smelled of burnt wood and something strange, something metallic. As Ethan walked deeper into the forest, his flashlight beam trembled slightly in his hands. Then he saw it. A glowing crater lay ahead, steam rising from its edges. Sparks flickered from what looked like metal fragments scattered around the impact site. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't a meteor. At the center of the crater, something moved. He stepped closer, heart pounding. A figure lay there, struggling to breathe. The being was tall and slender, covered in what looked like dark silver armor, though parts of it were broken, revealing smooth, pale blue skin beneath. It wasn't human. Ethan's legs froze. His mind screamed at him to run. This was impossible. Aliens weren't supposed to be real, or if they weren't supposed to crash land near him. Then the figure opened its eyes. Glowing golden eyes, filled with desperation, locked onto Ethan's. The alien tried to speak, but its voice was weak. It reached out a trembling hand, barely able to lift it. Ethan took a cautious step forward, his fear battling his curiosity. Can you understand me?" he whispered. The alien took a shaky breath, then spoke in a low, tired voice. "Help. Me. A deal like no other." Ethan hesitated. The alien was injured, struggling to move. Its breathing was labored, as if every breath was a fight. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, still gripping his flashlight tightly. The alien tried to sit up but groaned in pain. Its hand clutched at a wound on its side, dark blue liquid oozing between its fingers. "They will find me. You must hide me." "They?" Ethan's stomach twisted. Someone, or something, was hunting this alien. Before he could ask more, the alien reached into a small metallic device on its wrist and pressed a button. A tiny crystal sphere emerged from a hidden compartment, glowing with a soft blue light. It held the sphere up to Ethan. "Hide me, and this is yours." Ethan frowned. "What is it?" The alien's golden eyes flickered. "A gift, beyond imagination." Ethan stared at the crystal. A gift. What kind of gift? The way it shimmered made his skin tingle, as if it wasn't just light. It was knowledge, power, something more. His logical mind screamed at him to leave, to call someone, maybe the military, the government. But deep inside, another voice whispered, "This is history. This is your moment." The alien shuddered, its strength fading. Its head tilted back, and for a second, Ethan feared it had died. But then, weakly, it whispered, "They are coming."